So we've got Vera Manhoso from the wonderful RTB House talking about why focusing on new users is actually holding back your mobile game and what you should be doing when you're retargeting, which is really essential advice. So thank you, Vera.
Definitely. Hi, good morning. Really nice to see you all. I feel like I almost forgot how cold it is outside when I got in here. It's always really nice to see everyone. First conference of the year as well. So thank you so much for tuning in. Today I'll be talking about the power of retargeting campaigns and why focusing on UA only is holding back your mobile game. My name is Vera, and I'm a gaming account director at RTB House. I specialize in programmatic advertising and have experience in both user acquisition and retargeting campaigns. RTB House is a retargeting DSP, really well known to be one of the first major DSPs to roll out deep learning algorithms to its entire product stack. Okay, so I would love to get to know you all a little bit as well, so I would like to try this. If you have ever tested retargeting or are testing retargeting right now, can you please put your hand up? Nice, great, oh, quite a few, brilliant. And the ones that have not tested? There's a few as well, great, okay, nice. We'll be sure that we cover a little bit of insights for both parts then, hopefully. But yeah, lovely, thank you so much for that. So ads are everywhere. You will know this, you know, we breathe it every day. As marketers as well, advertisers, you always want to be the one that has the best creative out there. Everyone wants that winning ad, right? I read a blog post recently on LinkedIn. I could not verify this source, but it was claiming that the average user would be exposed to between 2,000 to 10,000 ads a day. That is a lot, right? I found that pretty crazy. I tried to verify the source, and I couldn't, but I tried to calculate it, and it is possible. It does not mean that you will see all those ads, right? But there are a lot of ads out there, and you want to be that winning ad. How do you protect yourself against the competition when there's so much competition out there for both user acquisition and retargeting? Everyone wants your players, right? And we know that they're very limited as well. So a few numbers here. According to Unity on a recent report, on mobile gamers that spend on in-app purchase, there's only 1.83%. That's a very, very small pool of users, right? We know that those are super important for your game as well. And then it takes an average of 3.6 days for those players to make their first in-app purchase, according to AppsFlyers. So if you think of it that way, you want to have your retargeting campaigns ready shortly after that first install happens, right? You don't really want to wait too long because you want to make sure you keep those high LTV users in your game. And then the cost of user acquisition is obviously way higher than retargeting too. So with user acquisition, you don't know your players of value yet, you're trying to find those, it's a bit of shooting in the dark, right? Of course, the cost of that will be way higher compared to retargeting when you already know your players of value, you already know who you would like to focus on. So there's that benefit too, in terms of combining both, so you're sure you're a little bit more cost efficient as well. What is the key to perfect timing? So I feel like there's a few aspects to look into it. With retargeting, you might focus on churn prevention, and that is how retargeting is very cost effective as well, because you want to make sure that, again, you're quite quick targeting users back to your game. It does not necessarily mean that they fully stopped playing it. So that is the best time to actually target those users back to your game after that initial install. Do not wait around too long, right? It's also important that you define your inactivity window. And what does that mean for you and for your game? I feel like often there's that misconception that user acquisition, you don't want to start your retargeting campaign straight away because you want to give enough time for that cohort to mature with new user acquisition campaigns. I feel like that misconception was around a little bit more back then, but it's starting to flow away where retargeting is actually a partner of UA, and it's important that you use it together and are quick to target those users there as well. And then just be open to test, really, because what is your inactivity window today might not be the same in a year's time. So I'm currently working with a very well-known advertiser that has had a longer inactivity window for quite a long time of 30 days, and we've been challenging it throughout the time. What is the concept around it? Why would you like to wait 30 days to start your retargeting campaigns? Is that because UA is in the middle? What's the reason? There was not really a strategy behind it, and we've decided to test target inactive users from day 7 as opposed to 30. And the lift was pretty considerable. So we are now testing an actual campaign where we will change the inactivity window to 7 days, and that will be the strategy as we move forward. So it's important that you're also keen on exploring what works well for you and what works well for your game. So now that you sit with your times and you know that quickness is important, you're ready to re-engage those users back to the game. You have a question that I hear all the time from advertisers is the audience size. Is my audience big enough to target players to actually have a retargeting campaign? So I feel like there's 2 areas that you should look at in here. Your audience doesn't need to be huge to start with, right? And whoever you decide to support you with as a partner for your retargeting campaigns will 100% give you this advice as well and be able to help you. But if we want to give it a number, sometimes 2,000 or 3,000 really good players is already enough and justifies you to run that retargeting activity. And that does not mean that you need to have a retargeting campaign on throughout the entire year, right? You can, of course, just tackle a very specific season for you, or something really important happening on a game, a huge release that you really want everyone to see about. You might want to decide that you want to run a retargeting campaign to get those players of high value back to your game at that time. Retargeting is really easy as well. So again, a lot of what we might hear is, oh, we're not ready yet because there's so much that goes into it, and we need to prepare to have our audience. What is it that needs to be in place for retargeting? It's very simple. You need to have an MMP because you will need to share post-back events with your partner. So that's quite key. And you need to have revenue events with a value attached to those, so it will help your partner find those users of value, and obviously it helps the algorithm as well build its predictions. You'll then need tracking links, which you will for user acquisition campaigns as well. And then there's extra bits that you can work along as you go, such as deep links or creative that will be specific for retargeting. But it is pretty simple. And then the value of your partners and the partners that you choose to work with. I recently had a meeting with an advertiser that I work with at the moment, and he was telling me, you know what? Way harder than finding a user acquisition partner, a DSP, or retargeting, way harder than finding someone that has a really good model, a really good product, an algorithm that is fantastic, really, last tech. It is to find an account manager that actually cares about my game. And I thought, that's pretty interesting, because it doesn't matter how good that product might be. If you work with someone that won't be there to give you guidance, that can't really support you, you just adding extra load onto your day-to-day, right? So you do really want to try and find someone that understands your game, that is keen to open and help. And I know that is hard, but through conversation, you will be able, I'm sure, to find a lot of great people to work with. And then lastly, product and retention. So you obviously have invested quite a lot into gaining your new users and then maintaining them through retargeting. What happens to retention, and how can you make sure that those players continue playing the game and stay engaged with your app? There really needs to be communication between your user acquisition team and your product team. If your product team isn't in tune, you don't really know what's going to happen next. Are there new levels for those players to continue playing? What is it that exciting that is coming up? And whatever you're communicating through ads with your user acquisition team, retargeting team, needs to also come from your product team. So the communication between those is super, super key for you as well. Now, how do you go from getting those lost users to make them super loyal and just really engage with your game? Here it's all about personalization. How do you capture those players' attention? It's all through tailored optimization, creative personalization, and you want that message to really be meaningful as well for those players. So we covered earlier that it's really important to have creative as well. Creative doesn't necessarily need to be specific to retargeting when you start a retargeting campaign, but it is really important. And it can be simple things as your CTA to be specific to retargeting. Those players, talking directly to them through ads. And as we said, there's so many out there, you want to make sure that the message is directed at your players as well. You might want to try to focus on your VIP users and make sure that you have some really exciting rewards to them that they will not say no to at all and will make them feel super special when they see that ad targeted at them. Or you might want to decide that you want to focus on non-payers that are super high likely to convert because they've reached level 100 already. So you want to give them a little flavor of what a reward from anything that could be an in-app purchase might be. So it's defining what your objectives are as well and work alongside with your retargeting partner to make sure that that can happen. And then lastly, just remember that combining both retargeting and user acquisition does not only have obviously the value of being cost effective, you're communicating directly to your players, the message is way more specific and it's tailored, and we do see advertisers getting up to 150% increase on their conversion value when they combine both. So it is really beneficial and definitely a strategy that we see advertisers adopting way more and more as we go through. Thank you so much for listening in.
So, do you have any questions from the audience? Just questions over there?
Yeah, hello, my name is Polina, I'm from Wargaming, and the question is about what do you think, should the inactivity window be the same as re-engagement window? Or re-engagement window can be longer so we can re-engage the same users more than once?
Yeah, really good question. Thank you. So you will have re-engagement, and with your inactivity window will be the same. If I try and understand your question, what you might want to do is not focus on users that have just installed the game recently, for example. If that is your concern, so say that you have user acquisition campaigns running at the moment, and you won't want to waste, or even show more ads to those users that literally have just started your game 2 or 3 days ago. Your inactivity window will be the same, but you can tell your partner, for example, hey, I do not want to target any new users to the game that were, had an install, say, over the past 6 months, if that is what you would like. So you want to focus. So it's the difference between last login and inactivity window, I think, there that you're probably thinking. So you might just want to focus on the last login, but put aside all those users that you got through the game via user acquisition most recently. So that is possible.
Any more questions? Just a question there at the back.
Do you have any tips on how to kind of estimate what kind of budget or investment you can have depending on your audience size for retargeting, etc.? Any tips would be welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Again, as you're saying, it really depends on your audience size. You don't necessarily need to commit a certain amount of budget. If I can give you a figure, you might be able to start a retargeting campaign with a daily spend of $300 a day, for example. Of course, this depends on your audience size. That will have to justify that. And also you want to make sure that is sufficient for you as well, but that works for internal budget. But that would be a really nice starting point if you really want to give it a number. But then, of course, that will be dependent on your audience size as well.
That leads to my question for you, actually. When you're talking about people being reluctant to start retargeting campaigns, do you think that's from a budget perspective? Do you think that they're looking at taking from a UA budget and putting into retargeting?
I think a little bit, yes, because I feel like the feedback is that UA is our priority, right? We really want to make sure that we get as many new users in the game. This is often where we would hear from developers or advertisers. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you're actually being cost effective with your budget, right? Because you will have way more value for you to focus on those users that you already know, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're playing your game anymore. They've gone somewhere else already because it's so competitive out there. So obviously it does make sense that you have that data. That data is precious. Why not just use it and make sure that those players of really high value keep coming back to your game?
Because this is a recurring theme that I think we will hear much more about, the data that you hold yourself and investing in your first-party data. Do you find that in terms of retargeting messages and creatives, that they're starting to become a little bit more sophisticated as people start to think about building their communities, you know, from a re-engagement perspective?
Yes, 100%. And there's, you know, so many developers out there doing fantastic testing around this. It's become way more personable than it was, for sure. It's becoming really quick as well. You know, it's how to have your campaign set up is so specific and targeted to those users, where creative might be specific for each of those groups of users that you really want to target. And there's advertisers out there doing this really well. Something really interesting too, even though user acquisition, you know, continues to take place as a priority compared to retargeting, we actually recently had an advertiser that has asked to start an integration when their game is actually not ready yet. So their new game is about to be launched, but they already started integration with us as a retargeting partner. And their feedback is that they want to make sure that we start collecting their data from that initial stage, and so when they are ready, they can go straight away and tackle those users whenever they have a big enough audience as well. So I found that really interesting, and that's bit new.
It is, isn't it? It's like you're ensuring your collection of your first-party data by getting in there and knowing it before you start retargeting.
Definitely.
That's fascinating.
Yes.
That's an interesting shift.
Yeah.
Great. Any more questions? Oh, here we go. One at the back. This lady here in the white. Oh, sorry. In front of you. There you go. That lady. Were you asking a question? Oh, I thought you were.
I think at the end. Yeah.
Sorry.
Hi, thanks. That was a really interesting talk. Just out of interest, because you quoted this 150% return on investment stuff. So obviously that works if you're kind of a newer game and you're looking for that kind of prevent churn for new users. If you were looking at a retargeting campaign for users that have been out for, say, kind of an extra couple of months, or you're trying to kick some life back into a game, how do you find that the return on investment changes compared to that recent inactivity window?
It will be very different, for sure. You will know this. So when you, of course, you will see that your campaigns that will get better traction will be the ones on those users that are inactive most recently, right? But then what you might also want to have it broken down by two. You want to focus on those still because you want to make sure that they continue playing, but you also want to tackle users that got inactive longer ago, and that also works. You might just see that the scale will be way smaller, right, naturally, but it does still work. So we actually do have that set up for a lot of the advertisers that we work with, where they still want to make sure that they focus on those users that stop playing up to, I don't know, 90 days is quite a popular, those 45 to 90 days or 60 to 90 days inactivity. So we sure that we still continue to tackle those, but obviously the return will be a little bit lower compared to your most recent inactive users.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vera. I have clients who work for RTB House on retargeting campaigns, and these guys are the best. So definitely grab Vera afterwards if you have any more questions. So thanks, Vera.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thanks for tuning in.